He kissed her goodbye like always, gentle, trusting, unaware. She promised it was just a funeral, just a short trip, only a few days away. But while he watered the garden and waited for a call, she buried more than an old teacher. One kiss at a time with a man she once called her past. She buried a life they had built. What she didn't know was that her betrayal wasn't just noticed, it was documented. And the man she left behind wasn't going to scream, wasn't going to beg. He was going to burn it all down, quietly, brilliantly, with a vengeance she'd never see coming. Tyler McCain lived for rhythm. Not music, not poetry, but the rhythm of routine. The steady cadence of a life shaped over 12 years of marriage with Lillian Carter McCain. He knew every sound she made, the way her suitcase zipped on Thursdays, the soft hum she made brushing her hair, the exact time it took her coffee to brew before she added 2 sugars, no cream. That rhythm gave him peace. It told him everything was okay, until it wasn't. The call came just after sunrise. Tyler was feeding their aging golden retriever, Cooper, when Lillian stepped into the kitchen, phone to her ear, eyes already distant. She didn't meet his gaze when she said, "That was my sister. Mrs. Kinley passed away." Mrs. Kinley, their old high school literature teacher, the woman who handed out second chances like bookmarks, who made Lillian fall in love with stories, who gave Tyler the confidence to write his first poem. She was more than a teacher. She was the reason they met. "I have to go to Mara Goldridge," Lillian said, her voice calm and final. "For the funeral?" He nodded. "Do you want me to come?" She shook her head. "No, you've got work. And the dog. I won't be long." She said it kindly, softly, but something about it felt off. The next morning, her sister Samantha pulled into the driveway with her usual urgency. Lillian's suitcase was already packed, her hair tied back in a low braid she wore when she needed to feel steady. Tyler helped her with the bag, watched her check the bouquet of white lilies one last time. He held her close. "You've got cash? Your charger? Meds for your back?" She smiled. "Yes, all of it. I'll text when we get there." Then she was gone. He stood by the window, watching the car shrink into the horizon like a chapter ending before its final page. He didn't know that 6 hours away, in a town heavy with river scent and pine, the woman he loved was about to rewrite everything. In Willow Hollow, Lillian felt 17 again, not in the sweet way, but in the unfinished, aching, unsure way. Mara Goldridge stirred teenage memories she'd never fully put to rest, especially one. Jason Miles. Even the name made her uneasy. Samantha teased, stirring her coffee like she was stirring trouble. "I heard he moved back here after his divorce," she said. "You two were always kind of poetic together." Lillian rolled her eyes, but something shifted inside. Jason had been her first everything. First kiss, first heartbreak, first proof that memory doesn't fade just because time passes. And when she saw him the next day at the church, standing by the photo display with that crooked grin and silvering hair, it felt like no time had passed at all. He walked toward her. "Lillian," he said, voice older, deeper, but unmistakably his. "Didn't expect to see you here." "I could say the same," she replied, trying not to sound breathless. They talked for hours, about Mrs. Kinley, about nothing, about the lives they didn't end up living. Her laugh was too loud. Her heart beat too fast. And when he messaged her later that night, "Still surreal seeing you. Want to grab coffee tomorrow," she told herself it was innocent, but she already knew it wasn't. The next morning, while Samantha ran errands, Lillian slipped on a warm sweater and just enough mascara. She stared at herself in the mirror too long. She met Jason at Riverbend Cafe, then walked with him, talked with him, kissed him on a bridge where the wind carried every unspoken word. Then they disappeared into a quiet studio, away from the world. Urgent, hidden, final. She missed the burial by 10 minutes. That night, lying next to her sister, her heart still racing, guilt blooming like rot beneath her skin, she stared at the spinning ceiling fan. Every second felt criminal. Back home, Tyler was watering her roses, checking his phone, waiting for a message that never came. What neither of them knew, what no one knew, was that someone else had been watching. and someone had already taken the pictures. When Lillian came home, Tyler greeted her with a hug. Cooper barked, tail wagging hard. But Tyler's eyes lingered. He noticed a scent, musky, unfamiliar, not the light floral she always wore. Something that didn't belong in their home. Something from the past. Long trip, he asked. She nodded. Long, tiring. Her suitcase stayed packed in the corner. I'll unpack later, she said. He didn't press. He never did. But she went to bed early, and he stayed up watching the slow swing of the porch light, his chest tight, his thoughts loud. By Monday evening, the storm arrived. She walked into the kitchen and froze. Tyler sat at the table, two neat stacks of paper in front of him. Cooper lay still by his feet. The silence was thick, heavy, waiting. And Lillian knew this wasn't just the end of a lie. It was the beginning of something else entirely. There's a kind of pressure in the air just before lightning strikes. A stillness that warns something's about to break. Tyler didn't say a word. He just slid an envelope across the table. Inside, divorce papers already signed. Tucked between the documents were photographs. Lillian's hands shook as she pulled them out one by one. Her and Jason laughing on the bridge. Her hand on his chest. Their lips almost touching. One of them disappearing into a side entrance of a photo studio, and later, emerging after dusk. Her hair a mess, blouse wrinkled, fingers tangled with his. The room seemed to tilt. Tyler, she choked. I can explain. You don't need to, he said quietly. The photos already did. It was a mistake, she stammered. Just a moment. It meant nothing. I still love you. But you didn't choose me, he replied, voice low, almost tired. You chose not to tell me. You chose to cross the line. That's what matters. Her eyes stung. Please don't do this. We've built so much. What you just tore down in one weekend. She reached for his hand. He flinched like her touch burned. The worst part wasn't the anger. It was the emptiness. He looked hollow. Not mad, just done. How did you even get these? She whispered. He didn't look away. Anonymous email. No name. Just photos. Time-stamped. Untraceable. Her heart thundered. Someone had known. Had watched. Had documented. That was somehow worse than the act itself. I didn't plan it, she said softly. That's the problem, he replied. You didn't plan not to. That night, Lillian couldn't sleep. She wandered the hallway with the envelope clutched to her chest, staring at the woman frozen in those images, the version of herself who had smiled in Jason's arms, convinced she could compartmentalize betrayal without consequence. She caught her reflection in the window, pale, lost, somehow smaller. By morning, she packed a bag and left. No dramatic goodbye. No slammed doors. Just quiet retreat. She moved into a friend's guest room, gave half-truths, buried herself in work, and waited for a message from Tyler that never came. Tyler sold the house. He moved into a downtown loft, simple, quiet, anonymous. He didn't tell friends. He didn't answer her calls. Even the dog adjusted faster than he did. At night, Tyler sat alone, brushing his fingers over the photos, not out of hate but curiosity, trying to understand when it started, how he hadn't seen it, whether she meant to hurt him, or just hadn't cared if she did. One afternoon, his phone buzzed. A message from Samantha, just checking in. You okay? He didn't respond at first, but days later, she suggested coffee near the university. He agreed. She arrived in scrubs, hair in a tired bun, exhaustion clinging to her smile. They talked about everything except Lillian. It became routine, weekly check-ins, friendly dinners, shared dog walks. Tyler told himself it was innocent, but the silence between them had weight. One chilly Saturday after a vet appointment, Samantha invited him over for tea. Her apartment smelled like cinnamon and quiet. He hadn't meant to stay long, but the conversation drifted to old memories. Camping trips with Lillian. How laughter used to come easy. How grief could glue people together. Then she said it. I always envied how steady you were. You made Lillian feel like the world wouldn't fall apart. He looked up. That's not what she wanted in the end. Samantha hesitated. Maybe she didn't know what she wanted. Their eyes lingered too long. Then, without speaking, they leaned in. It wasn't passionate. It wasn't reckless. It was quiet, desperate, human. That night, Tyler lay in her bed, sleep evading him. Guilt tapped at his ribs. Was this revenge or survival? He didn't know. But in the morning, she'd already made coffee. "Stay," she whispered. And he did. Weeks passed. Their secret wrapped itself into routine. Sunday mornings, grocery runs, dog walks. They didn't call it love. They didn't name it at all. Until one morning, whispers started drifting through their small town, and a photo followed them home. A friend of Lillian sent her a message. "Saw your ex and your sister at Oak Ridge Market. Looked cozy." Lillian clicked the attachment. Tyler and Samantha, hand in hand, smiling, a grocery cart between them. Her stomach twisted. The betrayal she'd inflicted had returned, mirrored back at her. This time, she wasn't the one behind the lens. She booked the flight that same hour. No hesitation. No plan. Just instinct. Betrayal had a way of killing logic. It wasn't about Tyler. It was about Samantha, the one person she thought she could always trust. By the time she reached Green Hollow, summer humidity clung like punishment. She barely remembered the drive. Just as she stood in front of Samantha's apartment, her heart pounding like it wanted out of her chest. She knocked once, then again louder. Samantha opened the door, hair loose, an old t-shirt on, still groggy. But the look in her eyes wasn't sleep. It was guilt. Lillian didn't wait to be invited. She stepped in. The air inside smelled like cinnamon and lavender. Familiar. Too familiar. Her fists clenched. "How long?" Samantha shut the door slowly. "Lillian, how long?" Her voice cracked. "A couple months. Maybe more." Lillian laughed. Bitter. Shattered. "Right after the funeral, wasn't it?" Silence. That was answer enough. "So while I was falling apart, you were playing savior?" Samantha reached for her, but Lillian recoiled. "Don't touch me." "I didn't plan for this to happen," Samantha whispered. "No," Lillian snapped. "You waited, like always. Watching. Waiting. Like a shadow. That's not fair." "No," Lillian said, voice low and sharp. "What's not fair is that you knew what I was going through. You saw everything. And you still thought, what? That you could just step into my life like it was a role you deserved more." They stood frozen, hearts thudding in different directions. "I didn't chase him," Samantha said. "I didn't seduce him. We were two broken people. Maybe we just made each other feel human again." Lillian swallowed the pain burning in her throat. "You helped yourself to my husband." The silence that followed was worse than shouting. Finally, Lillian's voice softened. "The part that hurts the most isn't Tyler. It's you. I always thought we'd protect each other. That no matter what happened, we were unshakable." Tears welled in Samantha's eyes. "I never wanted to hurt you. But you did." At the door, Lillian paused. "You ever wonder who sent those photos to Tyler?" Samantha didn't answer. "Yeah," Lillian said. "I thought so." She left. The door clicked behind her like a chapter closing. That night, Samantha couldn't sleep. She lay beside Tyler, stiff and distant. He noticed, turned toward her. "You okay?" "No," she whispered. "What is it?" She sat up. "I need to tell you something." He knew it wasn't good. Samantha told him everything. About the day she saw Lillian and Jason together. How she followed them. Snapped the photos. Hands trembling. How she sent them anonymously. "I didn't mean to," she began. But Tyler's face had already gone still. "You're the one who sent them?" "I didn't know what else to do. You deserve the truth." He nodded, slowly. "You were right." She reached for him. "I never thought it would turn into this." He pulled away, gentle but firm. "Neither did I." He grabbed his keys and left. He drove aimlessly, letting the wind claw through the windows. The streets blurred. So did the timeline of everything he thought he knew. Samantha, the woman who helped him heal, was also the one who shattered him in the first place. At the overlook above Hollow Lake, he just sat, the questions circling his mind like vultures. Did she do it to protect him or to hurt her sister? The truth probably lived somewhere in between, and that made it worse. By morning, he returned, not to talk, just to pack. No yelling, no scenes, just silence. Samantha stood by the window, arms wrapped around herself, tears sliding down her cheeks. She didn't ask him to stay. "I need time," he said. "I need to know what any of this meant. If it was real or just payback in disguise." She nodded, pale, lost. Meanwhile, back in Phoenix, Lillian sat on the floor of her apartment, the envelope of photos now crumpled, nearly shredded. She hadn't meant to keep them, but couldn't let them go either. They weren't just evidence. They were reminders of the exact moment everything cracked, of who she'd become. At first, the guilt had crushed her, but now it had hardened into something sharper. Not regret, not blame, just resolve. She applied for a job at a small community college downtown, got hired to teach creative writing, stopped checking Tyler's socials, stopped replaying that kiss on the bridge. She adopted a cat, started running, bought a used car in her own name. She wasn't trying to erase what she did, just survive it. Some wounds didn't need closure. They just needed to stop bleeding. Samantha needed distance. She moved back into her childhood home in Green Hollow. Their mother had grown frail. The paint chipped on every windowsill. The heater was stubborn in winter, but the house was quiet, safe, and it gave Samantha space to think. At night, she pored through old diaries, entries about feeling second best, about watching Lillian shine in every room, about a time in high school when she caught Tyler looking at Lillian with a kind of wonder she knew she'd never earn. The truth was cruel. She hadn't fallen in love with him. But when Lillian shattered what they had, a door opened, and Samantha walked through it. Now, that door had slammed behind her. She reached out once, texted Tyler simply, "I'm sorry for everything." He didn't reply. Tyler's loft became his sanctuary. He kept it minimal. No clutter, no shared furniture. He picked up pottery. Something about shaping clay felt symbolic. He didn't talk much to neighbors, but he grew familiar with the barista downstairs who never asked questions. Each Sunday, he took Cooper for long walks by the canal. One Wednesday, an envelope arrived in his mailbox. No return address. Inside was a single photograph, not of Jason, not of Lillian. It was Cooper running on the beach, tongue out, ears flapping. The photo was old. He could tell by the slightly warmer hue, the background sun low in the sky. Lillian had taken it, probably years ago, a moment captured and forgotten until now. He didn't cry, didn't smile either. He just stared at the image, then tucked it inside the back of a book on a shelf. Between two chapters, not at the end. Months passed. One day, while attending a farewell party for a retiring professor, Tyler ran into Samantha again. She looked different. Not older, just quieter. Her smile was cautious. "Hi," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "Hi," he replied. They talked for 5 minutes. Weather, work, her mom, pottery. When she reached out for a brief hug, he didn't hesitate, but he didn't linger either. As she walked away, Tyler realized something important. He didn't hate her. He didn't love her either. And that might be the most honest feeling he'd had in a long time. Winter came slowly that year. Green Hollow turned gray, then silver. Dusty wind danced through empty porches, and Tyler's breath came out in clouds each time he stepped onto his small balcony. He had gotten used to silence now, not the lonely kind, but the kind that no longer echoed with old arguments or unspoken questions. Some nights, he still thought of Lillian, not with anger, but with a strange, almost clinical curiosity. He wondered if she'd found peace in Phoenix, whether she had anyone now, whether the weight of what she did still pressed on her ribs the way it used to on his. He didn't miss her. Not really. What he missed was who he used to be when he believed in permanence. Lillian, on the other hand, had stopped trying to measure her days in guilt. Teaching gave her structure. Her students, most of whom were older than she'd expected, reminded her that mistakes weren't measured by their scandal, but by what we do afterward. She stopped waiting for closure. Sometimes she'd jog at sunrise through the dusty desert trails outside Phoenix, whispering half-finished poems to herself. Not to publish, not for fame, just because words helped her breathe. One day, she ran past a small bookstore with a hand-painted sign. Used, loved, worth another chapter. She stopped, walked in, and left with a blank journal. The next morning, she wrote the first honest sentence she'd written in years. I did a terrible thing, but I'm still here. Samantha rarely left Green Hollow. She found routine in taking care of their mother, repainting old walls, baking out a habit. She didn't reach out to Lillian again. She knew some things don't heal with words. But she often walked to the edge of town where the pine trees grew tall and the lake shimmered with sky, and she whispered apologies into the wind, not expecting them to be heard, but needing to say them anyway. One day, she started volunteering at a women's center. She found peace not in being forgiven, but in being useful. Tyler stayed away from serious relationships for a while. He wasn't bitter, just careful. He read more, took up photography, let Cooper sleep in the bed again. Some evenings, he sat by the fireplace with a cup of black coffee and watched the sky turn from orange to blue to ink. One night, after cleaning out old files, he came across the photograph again, the one Lillian had sent. He studied it for a moment, then did something simple. He framed it, placed it on a shelf beside a potted plant and a ceramic bowl he'd made himself. Not to remember her, but to remember the man he was, loving, trusting, loyal. A man who had been broken, yes, but not destroyed. The following spring, a mutual friend invited both Tyler and Lillian to the same wedding. They hadn't seen each other in over a year. Tyler wore a navy blue suit. Lillian arrived in a pale green dress that whispered through the grass as she walked. They saw each other across the reception, froze. Then slowly, carefully they approached. Neither of them smiled right away. They didn't hug. "Hi," she said. "Hey," he replied. There was a beat of silence. "I heard about the pottery," she said. "I heard about your teaching." They didn't apologize. They didn't rehash. They just talked about books, about how Cooper still hated baths, about how strange life was, how you can't undo what's been done, but you can stop carrying it like a punishment. When it was time to leave, they exchanged a quiet nod. Not a promise, not a reunion, just peace. Months later, Tyler stood on his balcony again, the air sweet with summer. He lit a small candle on the table beside him, just like he used to. Cooper nudged his leg for attention. Tyler smiled, rubbed the dog's ears, and sat back, letting the quiet wrap around him. Not as a weight, but as a comfort. And as the wind stirred the leaves below, he understood something that would stay with him for the rest of his life. Some betrayals break you. Others remake you. And sometimes you need both to become the version of yourself who finally stops waiting to be loved and simply chooses to be.